So I'm going to attempt to teach you how to make an embroidered hair bow, like this one, or this one, or this one right here. Now don't worry if you don't know how to embroider. I'll go through some stitches and techniques with you, and if you already know how to embroider, then you can skip me trying to teach you how to embroider part. Now I'm going to show you how to make this like ribbon hair bow. There have been some comments on my channel requesting this, so here we are. So I'm going to go through everything the way I've been doing it. This one I'm going to be focusing on the ribbon hair bows that I've been posting on my shorts, and we'll go through everything from start to finish, all the supplies, how to embroider it. We'll do the specific design. You don't have to do it, but for like demonstrative purposes, that's what I'm going to be doing, and how to put it all together. Now, I did come up with this technique myself in putting this together, and the pattern and measurements and everything through a lot of trial and error. I'm sure there's videos about this out there. I haven't seen them, but this is just how I have figured out how to do it, so keep that in mind. I have come to really love making hair bows because you can get really creative with them, and it's like a good outlet for me, I find, with like embroidery and testing out different like design patterns that maybe I want to apply to clothes or something else. And I'm really excited to share this process with you and teach you how to do this, and hopefully by the end of it you will know how to make a hair bow and embroider it and wear it all the time. So before we can get started, we're going to need to get some supplies. So the first thing you're obviously going to need is some fabric. This is just a good quality cotton. I recommend a good quality cotton if you're going to embroider it. If you're not going to embroider it, you can use whatever you want, really. Next thing, you're going to obviously need some embroidery thread. Again, if you're embroidering it. This is just DMC thread. It's basically the standard. You can get it at Michael's, craft stores. Easy. Next thing is embroidery needles. This is just DMC embroidery needles. Just like a pack of them. They're different sizes. It's good to have different sizes depending on what you're doing. And I'd also recommend a needle threader. This thing will save you so much time. The next thing you're gonna need is an embroidery hoop. These are just like the bamboo ones. I've been using these rectangle ones. They just do that. I guess that's a square. This one's a rectangle. I just find them easier because they hold the fabric really well, and I can do the entire project in one go without having to like readjust my hoop and like move it around. They're on Amazon, but the bamboo ones work just as good. Just use what you have. You're also going to need a fabric marker. This is a air erasable and like a water erasable one. So we got it's a 2-in-1. I like having both. I use the water erasable for like drawing out the pattern part and the air erasable for the design part. I get these ones at Walmart. It's the only place I found them, and because they're the least expensive, they're like $4, I think. If you're using a darker fabric, you can just use a chalk pencil or like one that's for dark colors. I usually just use a chalk pencil. You'll also need some scissors, a ruler. Now to put it together, and I'll talk about this a bit later, you'll either need a sewing machine or like a needle and thread. Some thread that matches your fabric is usually a good idea. You can also get some fabric tape. This is double-sided fabric tape. Usually use it for like hemming or whatever. This will come in handy, and we'll get to this stuff later. And lastly, you're gonna need a French barrette, a nice little hair clip that has nothing on it. Now, in terms of French barrettes, I went down a rabbit hole in trying to find the best one, because there's nothing more annoying than having a hair clip that breaks on you. Now, you can get these classic ones with the little bar in the middle. They work, but after doing some research, which wasn't easy, let me tell you, there's not that much information on hair clips on the internet. You can get these ones that don't have the thing in the middle, and they say Clip Paris on them. They're basically copies of the ones that used to be made in France. They're called like Clip France, but they don't make them anymore. They make them in, I'm assuming, China, Asia, somewhere. They're basically the same thing, apparently, according to the internet, and they're really good. So I got the Clip Paris ones off Etsy. That's really the only place I can find them. There's a few like small little boutique-y places that carry them. Etsy's probably gonna be the easiest. Sort of the regular ones you can get off Amazon, Etsy. A lot of like supply shops carry them too. So use whatever you want, but I do recommend if you can get your hands on a Clip Paris one, 10 out of 10. The length for these is, I cannot remember the length of these. Okay, these ones are 8 centimeters. These ones are 7 centimeters. This one is in between the two, 7.5, I don't know. And they're about 1 centimeter wide. So anything between like 7 and an 8 will work for the size that we're making. 6 even, you could probably do 6 inches. 6 centimeters, not inches. That would be way too big. All right, so I think that's everything we need. There'll probably be some things I forgot. Okay, so I ironed out my fabric because it was very wrinkly. I did wash this. You don't have to wash it. Just make sure it's ironed and there's no creases in it. The finished bow is going to be 4 inches by like 5 inches, like 4 inches wide, 5 inches tall. So of course you can make the bow bigger or smaller depending on how you feel. You're going to have to do some math to figure out measurements for that, and I don't feel like it. So that one's on you. So we're going to draw out our pattern for the hair bow. So we're gonna need our ruler and our marker, fabric marker, not a regular marker. That wouldn't be good. Okay, so I'm gonna draw out the pattern. I just marked off where like my square is gonna be, and we're gonna draw the top part first, and we're gonna do a 9-inch line across, 3 inches down. Okay, now we are going to separate 3 inches into 1 inch little sections horizontally. This doesn't have to be like super perfect, because that was definitely not super perfect. Try that again. Okay. So the middle line here is going to be the front of it. Now what we're going to do is find the middle, which is 4.5, and then do about a 1/4 inch on each side. And this is just like your center. There's no point in embroidering that because you're not going to see it, and we don't want to do more work than we have to. Now we need to go 2 inches on either side, and then do a 1/2 inch in. And why, do you ask, are we doing it this way? Because this is a part where it's gonna fold for like the bow, but you want to like embroider it all the way. But this one, you can see on the back, it goes all the way around. You don't want it just to look like embroidered on the front and then nothing in the back. So the 2 inches is how far we're going to embroider, and then the 1.5 is where we're going to fold it. Okay, and that's it for the top. It's a lot of math, a lot of measurements. Now we're going to move on to the tails. So you want to do, I've been doing them just sort of like stacked on top of each other, just because it's easier in a square. You can do it like in a line if you want, but it's kind of easier just to do it like this. 3 inches, and you may as well do 6 inches because that will be 2, and then 5 or 6, depending on how much leeway you want. Oh wow, that was not good. Now we're just breaking it into 3s. Now we're going to do the 2 middle ones for our tails. The final one is going to be 4 inches because you want some space at the bottom. Go up 3 centimeters from the 4 inches and draw our little angles. You don't have to do this if you want like not angled bottoms. Right there. Yes, I get confused. The extra space is just for seam allowance. It's for like sewing up the bottom and attaching it to the back. So make sure you do your angles going the right direction. Like you want them facing inwards because you can't turn them around if you embroider it. Learn that one the hard way. So we got our 2 tails and our top, and now just for the center, I tend to do this kind of like casually. 1/2 inch center, 1/2 inch, so like 1.5 inches long widthwise, and then I don't know, 2 inches long, maybe a little more. Give yourself a little extra room. And really, you'll probably only embroider like that much. Okay, I think we did it. So this was our final pattern. So everything we need. So again, we have our top, our tails, and our center. If you're using a frame like this, you can just do that. If you're using a hoop, you can just like do that and just like take it off, move it around. Have this bigger one too. Move it around as you go. Welcome to the part where I try to teach you how to embroider. Now, I'm not an embroidery expert, but I have been doing it for quite some time. So if you already know how to embroider or you're not embroidering your hair bow, you can skip this part or watch it just for fun. But if you're here to learn a little bit about embroidery, I'm just gonna go over 3 really simple stitches that we'll use for our hair bow if you're following the design that I'm doing. The design I came up with is just something pretty simple, but it still looks like, kind of looks like good. It looks good. Looks kind of like you know what you're doing. So the 3 stitches to do this design is a back stitch, stem stitch, and a lazy daisy stitch. I will also link some like how-to videos that aren't mine in the description. So if you want a little more in-depth tutorial, I don't want to spend too much time on the embroidery. So for the back stitch, come up how you normally would and make a single stitch. Then go up underneath a little bit above your last stitch, come up and stitch backwards, back into your first stitch. Hence, back stitch. Just go up, you go down. Don't pull it all the way through, so you have like this loop, and then just come up in the middle and pull it through. And then you just keep doing that. Down, leave a bit of a loop, halfway in between, approximately, and pull through. And for the lazy daisy stitch, you just come up, make a little loop, go back down right next to the hole that you came up of. Just come up here, put the loop over it, and pull it up. And you just go back down. And that's it. Okay, so now that we got our 3 basic stitches, we can move on to the design. Okay, this is the design that we're gonna do. It's just this back stitch, the 2 lines back stitched, and then these like floral silhouettes. So all you really need is 1 color of thread. I'm doing navy blue. I hope I have enough. I was literally at the store earlier today and didn't think to pick up more. So I'm using navy. You can use whatever color you want. There are no rules. So we're just gonna take a not too long of a piece of thread, otherwise it's gonna tangle up on you. They usually say like forearm length, and we're gonna split it in half. So the strands are made of 3. No, strands are made of 6, and we're splitting it into 3, and just pull. Now I'm just gonna draw out the design. Okay, so I've already done this side, and so I'm gonna do the other side of the top, and I'm just gonna take my ruler and line up other side. That side. Okay, so we're gonna take our embroidery thread, and I'm just gonna start a little bit in the center, just so that like when you add the center part, there's not gonna be like a weird space. And I'm just gonna do the back stitch along this line, trying to keep the stitches as even as possible. Okay, so we got our border. Honestly, you could even just leave it like this if you wanted to. But we're gonna add like the flowers. I'm treating the flowers like they're kind of like silhouettes. Now, for this, we're just gonna try to find like the center, roughly. Just draw like a line, a general line down the center. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just so we know where we're lining things up, so it's not completely all over the place. Now, I tend to freehand everything, or like, other than using a ruler, I tend to freehand like the designs. So you might want to trace a circle, but you can just draw like a very rough little circle, and then just find the center. I'm just gonna go from one side up and into, I lost my ruler, the center. Then do sides and down. This doesn't need to be perfect. It looks kind of nice when they're all like different lengths, I think, or they're not like perfectly all the same. So just do your best with it. Do in between, and everything is going into the center. You go in between those. Same thing, just going, if you find like something to trace, probably be ideal for your circle. Okay, so that's the first one. Now for the next one, again, I just draw everything. I'm gonna do it opposite. I'm gonna start with the stem and do the stem stitch. Usually about 3 stitches, 2 or 3 depending on how big you make them. starting here. And just sort of mark out the 3 like flower petals. And then going up beside each stitch, just doing the same thing, just a little bit lower. Just to sort of fill them out. And you can make them a little bit longer or a little bit shorter depending on, you can do about 2 or 3 for each. And for the leaf, we're just going to do the lazy daisy stitch. So you just go down like that, hang on to the loop, come up underneath where you want the leaf to, and then pull up, and then tack it down, and then come up in the middle, and just fill that little circle part in. So don't worry about your flowers all looking identical. I personally like it when things resemble nature, and like flowers in the real world don't look identical. They all have like their own personality and shapes and colors, but I like translating that into art and like really embracing the naturalness and uniqueness of nature. I mean, if you want it to be perfect and all identical, go ahead if you're one of those people. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't want you to feel like it has to be perfect and all identical, because that's not fun. And we're here to have fun. Alright, so I finished the embroidery and I cut out my pieces, and now it's time to put the whole thing together. So I'm going to start with the top part. There are a couple ways to do this. So the first thing you can do is like the basic, fold it over and sew it and then flip it around. You can do that for like all of them. The problem I find with doing that is I've pulled many an embroidery thread. That was a weird sentence. I've pulled many threads that I've embroidered, flipping it inside out, and it gets super wrinkly. So you want to do that? By all means. I don't want to. I have had too many disasters, and the embroidery, you put so much work into the embroidery and then you put it together and you mess it up. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to show you how I figured out how to do it, and you can take it or leave it. And if you find a better way to do it, by all means. But this has come from a lot of trial and error and tears. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is just iron everything over. So just fold on the lines. It's going to look like that. So iron this flat, iron the other side flat, and then do a little fold along one of them, and then just flip it up. And it looks like that. And just make sure everything is like even. You're gonna get your double-sided tape, and then just tape along the 2 sides. You just press it in like that. You just don't want to put it into the center. I'm stuck. Stuff is easy to work with. Like if you make a mistake, it can, if you take it off right away, it won't stick. And then just fold it up. Alright, so then we're just going to fold in where the line is that we marked, the 1.5 inches. Yes, you're going to have a lot of extra. You can just cut that off after. And then I usually like to do it just one at a time. One side at a time, just doing like this is just to hold it in place. It's not really all that important how your stitches look. So I did the other side as well. You can also do some loose stitches up the middle, or down the middle, up the middle. So you can just sort of like push it down a little bit so you get that like squished look. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want. Now for the center, I'm just going to trim off like a bit of the excess tape. Stick it on. And then just fold the sides in. And then I'm just going to take my needle and thread. So you're just going to stitch along the back there. So just sewed it along there. I do recommend sewing everything if you can, as opposed to gluing, just because sewing you can redo it and take it off if you've messed it up. Gluing is, you know, pretty permanent. Cut that off and flatten that out. And that's the top done. You just sort of have to like reshape it a bit. And now for the tails, I ironed them the same way as I did the top. So just folding them over and then like that. Now for the tails, this is where it gets a little complicated. What I do is I use my sewing machine and sew the bottom part and then tape the back together, okay? So to do that, if you're gonna do it that way, so we need to reverse it. If the folded part is on the top, when we flip it, it needs to be on the bottom. So when you flip it back around, everybody's where they need to be. So it's gonna be like that, basically. And then you're gonna sew along there. You can hand stitch it or use the machine if you have one. So I just used my sewing machine and sewed that. Then I'm just gonna cut it. And then flip her around. It always takes me a very long time. Okay, so I got it all flipped around, and then I just pressed it again with my iron and just sort of tuck it in. And then just make sure everybody's even, press it down. And then just do the same thing for the other side. Okay, so we got our two tails, and now we need to attach it to the top. You can do it a couple different ways. You can line them up and sew them together and like kind of squish them in. Or you can sew them one by one, whatever you find easiest. You want to sew it to the middle part. And don't worry, we'll clean it all up after, and the clip will cover up most of it anyway. So I just sewed the two together and just sort of like pinched them in the middle, and then I'm just going to attach it to the top. Just make sure that your tails are even. I usually just like whip stitch, so I just kind of loop around the sides of everything, of the center part. Make sure you get down lower as well so it will hold in place. And just make sure you are tying all your ends. Okay, so that's where we're at with the hair bow. I'm just going to clean it up. I'm going to take all the marker off, clean up the back, cut the excess fabric off the back here, and then we will attach the hair clip. And just use like a damp paper towel to get the marker off if you haven't done that yet. The purple will go away once it's dry. So I just hot glued on the clip. You can use a smaller clip if you want. It's up to you. And we've completed our embroidered hair bow. I feel like this was a lot. This is probably a long video. I wanted to make sure I got everything in. And let me know if you make one. I'd love to know how it goes. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.